They say some men fear hell. Sigma walks through it, not because he's fearless, but because he's used to fire. He's seen the world turn cold in the face of truth, seen masks melt under pressure, and realized explaining yourself is for men who want to be understood. The Sigma just wants to be free. He doesn't cry out when it burns. He doesn't scream when it breaks. He tightens his grip on his own reality and walks alone, surrounded by those who wonder why they can't break him. The reason is simple. He already walked through worse without a witness, and he survived not because someone saved him, but because he didn't need saving. The man who survives fire without applause doesn't need your understanding. He became his own. We live in a world obsessed with storytelling. People overshare, plead to be seen, and frame their pain into digestible narratives. But Sigma doesn't play that game. He doesn't turn trauma into theater. He doesn't ask for sympathy, and he sure as hell doesn't care if you get him. His hell was never built for performance. It was built for transformation. Every scar he carries is earned in silence. Every lesson paid for in isolation. While others scream their suffering to feel real, Sigma rebuilds quietly. No spotlight, no handouts, no validation. That's why people misunderstand him, because pain without a stage is a foreign language in a world that only listens to drama. 1. He knows the world isn't listening. It's just waiting to judge. Sigma doesn't waste time trying to explain himself to people who already have their minds made up. He's seen how most conversations aren't about understanding, they're about positioning. People don't listen to connect. They listen to respond, to debate, to reduce your experience to a story that fits their comfort. So he stopped offering them that chance. Why open your wounds to people who carry salt in their pockets? Why break your silence for a world addicted to noise? He walks through his personal hell knowing that some battles are meant to be fought alone, not because he lacks support, but because he doesn't need opinions where clarity is already earned in fire. Explaining yourself is asking to be boxed. Sigma was born to break the mold. 2. He understands that silence is the sharpest armor. There's power in not giving people access to your storm. The Sigma understands that silence isn't weakness, it's containment. When life burns everything down, he doesn't broadcast the ashes, he rebuilds under the radar. Every man has a threshold. The Sigma learn that when you protect your mind from external interference, you build resilience from within. People are curious about your pain, not because they care, but because it gives them a sense of control over you. That's why he says nothing. They think silence is submission. In reality, it's strategy. It's the ability to suffer in solitude and rise without warning. If no one knows where you hurt, they can't touch it. 3. He accepts that pain is not a group project. Pain is personal. Transformation is non-transferable. Sigma knows that his suffering won't be solved in support groups or diluted by empathy. It has to be carried, owned, faced head-on in the brutal solitude of self-confrontation. That's what separates him. Others want company in pain. He wants clarity, and clarity only comes when you sit with the fire long enough to see what survives the burn. While others process externally, Sigma refines internally. He walks through hell not hoping someone will notice, but knowing no one needs to. The fire doesn't ask for permission, neither does he. 4. He's seen how explanations turn into excuses. Sigma doesn't explain because he knows how easy it is to confuse storytelling with justification. Once you start narrating your pain, it's tempting to start rationalizing your stagnation. He refuses that trap. Pain isn't an excuse for mediocrity, it's a forge for evolution. That's why he doesn't tell the world what he's been through. He shows them what he became because of it. Explaining feels like surrendering power to opinion. Sigma never does that. He turns his pain into a sword, not a story. Your scars aren't for sympathy, they're for slicing through the old version of you. 5. He knows that being misunderstood is the price of real power. The Sigma has made peace with being misread. It's the tax he pays for thinking differently, for moving without fanfare, for operating from a level most people can't perceive. He doesn't care if people call him cold, distant, emotionless. He knows what he's processing in the shadows. And he also knows that explaining himself would just dilute the truth he's built in silence. Real power doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be owned. And that ownership starts when you stop needing to correct how the world views you. You don't owe clarity to a world that's addicted to confusion. 6. He's learned that self-validation is the only kind that lasts. Sigma doesn't chase applause. He doesn't perform for praise. He's built his life on one principle. The only approval that matters is the one that stares back in the mirror. That's why he can walk through hell without uttering a word. He knows what he endured, he knows what it cost, and he knows what it made him. External understanding is irrelevant when internal peace is intact. The world wants men to bleed publicly for their validation. Sigma prefers to heal privately in silence. Validation bought with pain is debt disguised as attention. 7. He moves differently because he's been broken differently. You can't fake the kind of composure the Sigma walks with. It's earned. It's forged through breakdowns no one witnessed, through nights that felt like years, through choices that felt like dying. That's why his silence isn't arrogance, it's depth. People call him mysterious, aloof, even robotic. What they don't see is that he's walking with a history too heavy to narrate and too valuable to cheapen with words. His hell made him holy not to the world, but to himself. And holiness doesn't advertise. He doesn't talk about the fire because he became its blueprint. 8. He walks through hell, knowing he's not supposed to come back the same. Most people seek healing so they can return to who they were. Sigma walks into the fire to kill who he was. His suffering isn't something he wants to undo, it's something he uses to unmake weakness. Every trial he faces is a tool. Every collapse is a renovation. He doesn't walk through hell hoping to survive. He walks through it, planning to evolve. That's why you'll never hear him asking for pity. He doesn't want to return, he wants to re-emerge. Hell wasn't meant to break him, it was meant to burn the parts that couldn't rule. 9. He doesn't need to be seen because he sees everything. Sigma's silence isn't blindness, it's observation. He watches, measures, studies everything while saying nothing. That's how he wins. While others are broadcasting their suffering, looking for allies, pity, or validation, he's collecting data, sharpening edges, adjusting strategy. Because clarity comes to the one who listens more than he speaks. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. His presence says enough. His results scream louder than any story could. So while they're explaining their wounds, he's planning his next move. 10. He became fireproof. Because he's been burned from the inside out. The final reason Sigma doesn't explain himself? Because he doesn't have to. He's already endured the worst voices, the ones in his own head. He's already fought the fiercest battles, the internal ones no one claps for. So external misunderstanding doesn't shake him. External hatred doesn't scratch him. He became fireproof not by avoiding heat, but by burning from the inside until he could walk through anything without flinching. And when you reach that level of internal dominance, you stop explaining your existence, you just exist. You don't explain fire to the forest, you let it change everything. On a final note, the Sigma male doesn't walk through hell to be praised. He doesn't endure pain to be admired. He walks because he must, and he walks alone. In a world obsessed with sharing, he becomes sacred through silence. In a culture built on applause, he becomes immortal by never asking for it. He doesn't want to be understood. He wants to be undeniable. Because when you truly own your pain, you don't talk about the fire, you become it.